All right, let's dive right into this explainer and look at the harsh reality of navigating the civil justice system without a lawyer. Picture this. You're walking into a courtroom to fight for your home, your kids, or your physical safety, and you have to do it entirely alone, while the other side sits comfortably behind a table with an experienced attorney. It's a terrifying thought, right? Today, we're exploring the invisible barriers in our legal system, how state and federal rules sometimes collide, and the innovative ways we are trying to close what's known as the civil justice gap.
Section 1. The Civil Justice Gap.
So there's a really fundamental difference between criminal and civil court that alters millions of lives on a daily basis. You know Gideon v. Wainwright, right? That landmark 1963 Supreme Court case? Because of that, existing federal law guarantees you a right to counsel in criminal proceedings. If you can't afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. It's that simple. But in civil court, it is a completely different story. Thanks to precedents like Lassiter v. Department of Social Services, there is generally no constitutionally guaranteed right to a lawyer. This means if you're facing a life-altering civil matter, you are essentially on your own unless you can somehow afford private representation.
Section 2. The Shriver Act Solution.
To try and actually bridge this gap, California rolled out the Sergeant Shriver Civil Counsel Act back in 2009. Think of it as testing out a civil Gideon. The whole idea was to provide legal counsel to low-income litigants just to see if it improves outcomes and court efficiency. It funds pilot projects to appoint legal counsel for profoundly critical human needs. And we aren't talking about minor disputes like fender benders here. We are talking about housing and evictions, domestic violence and civil harassment restraining orders, probate conservatorships, sole child custody actions, and elder abuse. The stakes in these proceedings are as high as they get, involving the potential deprivation of your shelter, your safety, or your family unity.
Now, let's look at the financial reality of these litigants. Because the Shriver Act isn't just an unlimited expansion of legal aid, it's highly targeted. To even qualify for this representation, a client's household income has to fall at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. To put that into perspective, looking at the 2026 federal poverty guidelines, 200% of the poverty line for a single-person household is exactly $31,920 a year. If you make even a single dollar more than that, you are completely locked out of the safety net. But if you make that or less, you represent the absolute most vulnerable demographic in the justice system.
Section 3. The Federal Funding Roadblock.
So, the Shriver Act sounds like a great fix, right? Well, that is until it slams right into a massive federal roadblock where bureaucracy clashes head-on with state intentions. It all comes down to a rule called 45 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 1626. Here's the deal. The federal government distributes legal aid funding through the Legal Services Corporation, or LSC. Back in 1996, they tightened the rules up. Basically, if an agency receives even a single dollar of LSC funding, they are legally barred from serving most undocumented individuals. And the real kicker? They are prohibited from helping them even if they want to use non-LSC funds, like California's own state grants, to do it.
So how does this mechanical conflict actually play out in the real world? It leaves highly vulnerable populations in rural areas with absolutely nowhere to turn. You see, the Shriver Act requires these projects to be designed around a central intake hub. In major cities, sure, there are plenty of non-federally funded agencies to partner with. But out in rural and agricultural parts of California, the LSC-funded program is often the only legal aid provider for miles. If they are the intake hub, they are federally forbidden from helping an undocumented farm worker facing eviction. It creates a massive gap in access to justice, and it prompted California lawmakers to scramble for a workaround.
Section 4. California's Legislative Fix.
This brings us to Assembly Bill 2193. It's California's pragmatic legislative attempt to ensure state funds can be used efficiently without violating those federal restrictions. It basically operates in 3 steps. Step 1 just acknowledges the reality. The lead agency cannot serve the individual due to their undocumented status. Step 2 then mandates that the agency must provide that person with a referral to get services elsewhere. But as advocates quickly pointed out, simply referring someone elsewhere when there is literally no other agency around is basically a dead end. So step 3 is the actual long-term fix. The State Judicial Council actively encourages these pilot programs to build a hub-and-spoke partnership with non-federally funded agencies, specifically bringing them in to handle the exact cases the main hub legally cannot touch.
Section 5. Digital Pro Bono Alternatives.
But you have to ask, what happens when elsewhere simply doesn't physically exist in a rural farming community? Thankfully, we have some powerful digital safety nets stepping in to catch the folks who fall through the cracks, offering free, completely impartial legal guidance online. You've got platforms like ABA Free Legal Answers, which serve as virtual legal advice clinics.
If you qualify, you can just post your specific civil legal questions, and pro bono attorneys licensed in your state will provide direct information. And then there are resources like Law Help CA. This serves as California's official massive directory of pre-screened legal aid organizations and a huge library of self-help legal information. And the best part? Both of them are completely free.
What's actually really amazing about this is how these digital platforms target specific federal gaps. The American Bar Association specifically operates a totally separate federal portal just for ABA free legal answers. On this site, volunteer attorneys who have special accreditation can answer incredibly complex immigration questions. We're talking deportation, DACA, green cards, and asylum. They also tackle federal veterans issues like VA disability benefits and discharge upgrades. Now, these volunteer lawyers aren't taking on formal representation in court, but just getting a direct, reliable answer from a qualified attorney, that can completely change the trajectory of someone's case, especially when they are totally cut off from local physical resources.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, it really leaves us pondering the sheer fragility of our legal rights when state inclusion and federal restrictions collide like this. We've seen how California is kind of testing the waters of a civil Gideon through the Shriver Act, and how these digital platforms are stepping up to fill the geographic and bureaucratic voids. But the underlying question remains: will equitable access to justice always depend on where the funding comes from, or is a true civil Gideon actually on the horizon? In matters involving our most basic human needs, our homes, our families, our safety, should your right to legal counsel depend on your zip code, your immigration status, or the complex origin of an agency's funding? It's a question that strikes at the absolute heart of what it means to have equal justice under the law. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this provided a clear window into the actual mechanics behind this civil justice gap.